and Emporia State University. To start off, we will have a budget presentation or summary overview by Brianna Horton, but my vice chair is asking me to not overlook the fact that are there any requests for bill sponsorships? Okay. Seeing none, we'll continue with Brianna Horton from KLRD to do a budget summary of Wichita State.
Good afternoon, committee. Brianna Horton with KLRD. Just as with the other university budgets, I will be giving you a brief overview and just hit some high points. And as always, please email me if you have any questions about what's in the budget summary. So that first page gives an overview of their budget from 2024 actuals to the Legislative Budget Committee, and then an overview of the university. If you flip to page 2, you'll see that summary budget request for FY 2025. And so I just want to note there is SGF reappropriations of $6.2 million in unspent SGF monies for capital renewal, demolition, aviation research, and for the Health Science Center. On page 3, you'll see all of those adjustments, which pop up in every university budget, which is the DEI adjustment, student financial aid, state universities capital renewal, and then an operating adjustment, which is for for NIST playbook, and then cybersecurity funds being distributed to the universities. If you flip to page 4, you will see some information on the Wichita Biomedical Campus, and then you'll see item number 10 is for the Health Collaboration Fund. If you flip to page 5, I just wanted to highlight yesterday, since we had conversation about FTE, the agency requests 189.2 FTE positions, primarily for research and for the public service program. So that's 25. If we move to page 6, you'll see that summary budget requests. You'll see some of those same items in 25 and 26 for the DEI adjustment and student financial aid. There are no enhancements or supplements in these budget summaries because those are all in the Board of Regents, which we have reported out. If you flip to page 7, item number 4, you will see the aviation research, because there was an SGF appropriation last year by the 2024 legislature. Item number 6, you'll see those are some federal grants. They have some contracts with the Department of Defense. And if you flip to page 8, you'll see some more information about the biomedical campus. And then you'll also see on item number 9, they're still requesting those FTE from 25 into 26. If you flip to page 9, all of the capital improvements are set up kind of the same for all the universities. So SGF projects, special revenue projects, and then I try and highlight those big projects. So for Wichita State, that is the biomedical campus. So it's broken out by SGF, and then there's special revenue funds that they use to pay for that. And then obviously rehab and repair. And then for fiscal year 2026, their capital improvements are primarily special revenue fund projects for the geology building and then for NIAR Hub. And of course, with all the universities, there's a breakout of their 10-year expenditures, all of their programs, their FTE by program. And then in the back, I tried to detail what those programs were. So if you had a question about what position they had and where that kind of fell, there's a description of that in the back. And with that, Mr. Chair, I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Brianna. Are there any questions from the committee? Representative Wagoner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brianna, just clarify for me again, the $23 million decrease in salaries and wages in fiscal year 2025. So what exactly is that? Is that just what is that about?
Representative Wagoner, which page are you on? Just to make sure.
On, well, page 2. I mean, there's sort of an explanation on page 5. You know, and so was some program discontinued, or is this just some what?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to give you a brief answer. I can go back and look. I think this is just showing a decrease for those expenditures for salaries and wages being spent. That is my understanding briefly.
Just a general decrease in salaries and wages.
So when I'm looking at the budget, it just shows me the number, and then it shows me what fund it's coming from, and it shows me that decrease, and the category it falls in is salaries and wages. But when I sit down on my computer, I can see if I can get you some more information.
If I could, one other question. I take it I have the chair's permission, and explain to me again on this NIAR Hub for Advanced Manufacturing. This is $42 million. It is a special revenue fund. I mean, I kind of remember that being thrown in the budget last year. Is this is what? This is for capital expenditures? This is for what? For this aviation research business they have going.
Brianna?
Can you tell me which page you're on?
Oh,
so I
I'm
can
sorry.
make sure?
It's page 9. I'm looking under capital improvements. It's item number 2, special revenue fund projects, that it's giving some elaboration on.
So what was your question? So
Regarding the $42 million, that is, are they building a building? This is like, what exactly is this?
I will have to get back to you. I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. I'm going to get back to you.
All right. Fair
Representative, I believe maybe some of the, during testimony by Wichita State, they might be able to zero in a little bit more and share with you some more information when they present a little bit later. Are there any other questions for Brianna? And also, Chloe, is there anybody on WebEx that has any questions? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, we'll proceed with a presentation by Dr. Richard Muma from Wichita State University. We appreciate you being here today, and we really want you to impress upon us what your needs are for this budget year, and so we don't leave this meeting second guessing what it is that you need. So we are in a different budget environment than we were last year. Of course, we've enacted some legislation that's put us in a position of having to rein in some spending. I believe it was mentioned in appropriations this morning that we're spending $400 million more than we're getting in revenue. And so that is on the minds of many legislators as you go around the Capitol. So thank you for being here today, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you for letting me have the opportunity. I'll try my best to do that. You have 2 different handouts in front of you, this document right here, and then another one on oral health, and then a little fact card as well that we'll be referring to. So I wasn't going to show the slides. I was just going to refer to the, unless you have the slides. Do we have the slides? Okay, I guess we do. Yeah, okay. So as you know, some of you who have heard me speak before, WSU aspires to be one of the nation's most innovative public urban research universities, which is the reason why I'm here today, to let you know where we are in terms of our progress of our university and to help get some feedback from you to help shape us as we move forward. So if you look at slide 2, when I say Urban Public Research University, that means 2 things. We're here or there down in Wichita to provide affordable, accessible education to anybody who wants to go to school. And we're helping our community solve problems through research, through creative activities and other service initiatives. And every day we're driven by that affordability and access, feeding that talent pipeline, and making sure that we're preparing students for the workforce that are needed in our community and our state, and increasing economic prosperity for our community. So that's in slide 2. So let's talk about the first one, affordability and access. If you go to slide 3, this is just demonstrating our growth over the years, and both in WSU and WSU Tech, and we've been growing for several years. This is for many reasons. Sedgwick County is growing, and we're prioritizing citizens there for the workforce. Also, if you look at slide 4, we're keeping our price point affordable compared to our peers And we're using need-based aid that you have given us along the, over time, and our own institutional dollars to invest in these students. We're helping fill that gap that students have in financial need to go to school. From the funds you've approved for us over the last couple of years, that's $8 million for us. We've increased the population of students going to school, additional 7% receiving this aid. That's about 3,047 students. But that's not near enough. As you know, education is becoming very expensive for students, particularly many of our students who are low income or from disadvantaged backgrounds or first generation students. That's the future of kids coming out of school these days, particularly in our environment in Wichita. You can see in slide 5 that Kansas is at the bottom of FTE spending in our region. Although we're very appreciative of the aid that you've appropriated recently, we need more to help fill jobs and help create more jobs in the state. And here's a statistic. So we know that the jobs of the future are going to require something beyond high school. And in Sedgwick County alone, there's 83,000 students who all they have is a high school diploma between the ages of 25 and 35. That's 500,000 in the entire state. So if we could just capture a fraction of those individuals, we can have a lot more students in college. So we are supportive of increasing need-based aid to help build that workforce. That amounts to about $14 million of additional ongoing dollars to help get us to the regional average. And the reason why this is important, the states all around us are doing this to get more students into public education, to fill their talent needs, not just addressing their own individual needs, but their collective needs of their population. If we don't continue to do that, we're going to continue to be in a competitive disadvantage. We also support $6.4 million. It's out there to support retention efforts, student success efforts, making sure we recruit students into the pipeline, but also keep them there and make sure they graduate. Look at slide 6. There's some data there that you have in front of you that provides you some of the successes that we've had in terms of helping retain students, persist students along the way, and we think that that is actually working. But we believe once that's fully implemented that this will start paying for itself and there won't be needed investment from the legislature. So going to the second priority, and that's feeding the talent pipeline. We think that we're doing a good job with this already. Our enrollment growth is fueling this. 70% of our students are from the South Central region, and more than 70% of undergraduates stay in Kansas, ones that graduate from Wichita State and work there after they graduate. That's the highest in the state, and we're very proud to be able to be good stewards of your investment to make sure that most of our students are staying here in Kansas. Nearly all of WSU Tech students stay in Kansas and work. But you know that Kansas is not a growing population. We need to do more, and that's why we started recruiting students up and down the I-35 corridor, and you see that map here. We've expanded it recently. And that initiative has brought millions of more opportunities for students that would think about coming to Kansas, WSU in particular, and this has grown significantly, the amount of students who've come from those areas by 40% since we've been doing that. And as new people have come to the state, they're getting connected to applied learning experiences, they're taking jobs in Kansas, and they're staying here and helping grow our economy. Nearly 50% of these students are staying in the state when they graduate. Typically, an out-of-state student, only about 20% of those students stay. But the key here is that we're getting them connected to business and industry while they're a student when they show up on campus. The next two slides, slides 8 and 9, demonstrate some data that tells you how many students are actually benefiting from these partnerships that we have on our campus. Over 9,000 students are earning over $33 million a year. And once hired by these employers, and you can see the next slide, some of the employers that they're working with, ones that are on our campus, that shortens the amount of time that it requires them to become fully employable and in the workforce of those particular organizations. And we thank you for that support. It's really been helpful. You've recently invested in that as well. So we really believe that's really working and making a difference. And for the final priority, increasing economic prosperity for our community and our state, we do this by solving pressing issues through research in our community. So for example, problems that face local industry like the National Institute for Aviation Research at Wichita State, helping solve some of the aviation problems. And to the comment earlier about what that $42 million was for the Hammer building, that's the Hub for Advanced Manufacturing and Research building that we're currently building on our campus. That's a research grant that we received to help pay for that. So I know that was an issue earlier. Also, the Wichita Biomedical Campus is another aspect of increasing economic prosperity for our community. That's a partnership with KU that you all funded. It's currently under construction in downtown Wichita. So it's another example of how we're bringing together partners to help build talent, build the workforce, help grow our economy. Another thing I want to talk to you about, and that's the other handout that you have in front of you, this one right here, that is the oral health, dental health handout. You all know, those of you who've been here a long time in Kansas, Western Kansas, there's a severe lack of oral health care providers in our state. So we're exploring to see what Kansas's first dental school would look like in partnership with Fort Hays State University. We realize that we need to be in the rural areas and educating and training individuals in those areas so they'll stay there after they graduate. And so we're fortunate to have Fort Hays and their willingness to partner with us on that, just like we partnered with KU. Can't do any of these things by yourself. We all have our strengths and our resources. And we believe that this is something that does need to be addressed going forward in our state if we're going to make any headway on healthcare outcomes. I do want to also point out that this dental school that we're talking about fits into the biomedical campus healthcare corridor that we're trying to build in downtown Wichita with the biomedical campus, which you just recently funded. So we do believe there will be some synergies that we can develop along the way with the biomedical campus and be able to leverage some of those for the dental school. So it's not like we're going to have to build a all new infrastructure for that purpose. So a couple of things I want to point out to talk about some of the successes. I'm an outcomes-oriented person, and I know you all are too. So if you see slide 12, you see 161% increase in R&D expenditures since 2020. For every dollar that you all have invested over the years in aviation research, 17 has returned. And that's created over 3,300 jobs in the last 5 years. So those dollars that you've invested has significantly helped grow the economy. This past year, we surpassed $366 million in research expenditures. A significant portion of that funding was from industry, working with our industry partners, helping them solve problems of their pressing issues, aviation issues, and we're expecting to surpass $400 million this next year. I do want to point out, and I don't care a lot about rankings, but I do think it's important for you to understand this investment that you have made is showing up nationally in terms of where we fall in research from Wichita State University. So you can see there, we're #1 in aerospace R&D in the country among all universities. #2 in industry-funded engineering R&D. #6 total industry-funded R&D. #8 in the country in all engineering R&D funding in the United States, and #14 in Department of Defense R&D funding. This puts us at a different table. We have a different conversation with funders in Washington and others in the state, and it's important for you to know that that investment that you all have made over the years is what's making that possible. All right, I want to say a few things about compensation. I know that that's not a popular topic, but I just want to let you know where we are on that. And I also want to let you know there's always going to be an issue. We're not ever going to be able to solve employee compensation, but I do think that there's some things that we can do, and I want to let you know some things that we have done on our own already without your investment. So about 3 years ago, we started allocating internally towards this effort in our market-based pay compensation program. We're trying to get employees to 50% of the market median, just right in the middle. We're not trying to get 90, 100%, but just what would be a traditional approach to market-based compensation. So far, over the last 3 years, we've invested over $12 million through internal reallocation and revenues from enrollment growth to invest into employee compensations. That's helped pay our employees more, but we're still 16% below market in that investment. So we're still working on that, but we're losing faculty from other states around us. Texas in particular is investing heavily into higher education, and they are coming just ravaging our departments and taking our faculty. So we can't wait, and so have embarked on an additional initiative at the university to help further close that gap. Our gap is about $25 million. It's about $7 million for faculty and $18 million for staff. We can't do that in 1 year. We think we can do that over 5 years. That means additional internal reallocation through cuts, position reviews, other kinds of efficiencies. And I'm telling you this because we're willing to make these hard decisions, and we've done that. We've cut $23 million out of our budget over the last 5 years. But I do want to say, having an additional investment with you would help us accelerate that and help us keep our good people and attract additional talent to the university. That's also going to be able to allow us to continue to do the things I'm telling you that we're already doing as an institution and help continue to build the economy of Kansas. So if you go to slide 14, we have ample evidence of how we're using the resources that you've already given us by providing affordable access, developing the talent pipeline, and growing the state's economy. And I can't thank you enough for that. It's been very helpful. We have really moved the needle at the university. And you can see over the last 10 years, these investments have turned the needle on our enrollment. They have really accelerated and snowballed our research efforts, and we're getting more students into these areas to help feed the talent pipeline in business and industry areas that are desperately in need. The last slide, talent pipeline. I know there's budget requests for additional need-based aid. And we support that. $14 million, not a lot of, I mean, the big scheme of things, it's not a lot of money to get us to the regional average of what our regional states are investing in need-based aid. Student success, we also believe that that's something that should continue. We understand that you don't want to continue funding that forever. We believe just another year or two of additional funding, we can get to that point where this is paying for itself, so we're continuing to support that. Talk to you about the feasibility study and some of the planning early stages of a dental school. We're asking for $5 million on that, one-time dollars. The other thing I want to say about the dental school, if we don't do something here in our state about dental health, oral health, someone's going to come into the state and do it for us, and then we're not going to have any control over that. These people aren't going to stay here and practice as dentists, and so I think it's really important and a really key time that we need to be concerned about that. You all haven't been investing in IT and cybersecurity. That's key as we move forward. You know, people are trying to harm us every day in terms of cyber issues. You know that from here at the state capitol. We have used resources internally and the resources that you've given us to centralize some of that work to help keep us all safe. And so that's also important to continue to invest in. And then I've already talked about employee compensation. We're going to continue to do the things that we feel like are important at the campus to help change some of those, but we would appreciate some additional support for that as well. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, President. And are there any questions from the committee? I'll call on Representative Sawyer.
Yeah, Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a good presentation, but have you seen the legislative budget proposal for Wichita State? I'm just curious what specific changes you would request from what the legislative budget approved.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything different there. We're just asking for that additional investment for Wichita State in oral health dental school.
Okay, so that's the only
Yeah.
additional ask. Okay, all right, great. Thank you.
Other questions from the committee? Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And being a graduate of Wichita State, this is always nice to hear an update from that. My question really is, it's not often that I see a decrease in requests for research from an institution, and it looks like you're deleting $5 million for aviation research. Is that being recouped someplace else? Is that just a cleanup of something? Can you explain?
Yeah, so that is funded from the first time this past year. That's Textron. It's money that comes to the university, and then we pass to Textron. That was taken out. We are trying to get that back in the budget from last year. So it's to help support Textron and their growth and some of their initiatives that they have going on in their company.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I do have a question for Brianna. Then based off the budget analysis, again, it's a negative $5 million. Based off that is that just illustrating the transfer of the funds? Okay. See, I was paying attention. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Are there other questions? We go to Vice Chair Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. So I've got some questions about the dental school. So approximately $750,000 for the feasibility study. And then I guess, is the study to determine if it's possible, or is the study to determine how to make it happen?
So I think it's the latter. It's you know, we do need to do some level setting on some of the priorities that we want to focus on. But one of the things that has changed from when we've talked about this over the years is we haven't had the partnership with Fort Hays State University. And so we need to design a dental school that's, you know, not only going to be centered in Wichita, but also in Hays. Because we believe that if we're going to make an impact with a dental school in this state, we got to train people out in Western Kansas. So that's part of it. So that's a new part. That's different. We don't know exactly what that's going to entail. And so that's our best guess of what the funds we would need to do that.
Vice Chair Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So then talk to me about this nice picture you've shown of the biomedical campus building. What all would go in that building?
That's a building that's already been funded by the legislature, and we received funding over 3 years. And last year was the rest of that to make up the in total $205 million. So that is KU's School of Medicine location in Wichita. It's their School of Pharmacy in Wichita, WSU's College of Health Professions, and the 7 departments that are in that particular college, and WSU Tech's health programs. So from the very entry-level healthcare program all the way to postgraduate medical education.
Would the dental school go in that building?
And not in that particular building, but we believe that we can use some of the labs and some of the other infrastructure that's being built to help support the dental school. So we wouldn't have to build another huge facility to support the dental program itself.
Have you broken ground on that building?
On this one that you have here in front of you?
Yeah.
Yes, it's under construction.
And
Coming out of the ground.
fall of 26, is that when you?
Say that again.
Fall of 26, is that when you expect to have it open?
It'll be finished in fall of 26 and open spring of 27.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go to Ranking Member Amix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Mumon, good to see you again. Question, just make sure I understood this right. You were talking about the dental school. If we don't do something, I understand that your fear is somebody else is going to come in and do it?
Well, I think this is kind of what you're seeing. You're seeing for-profit, not-for-profit organizations coming into states where they see that there's currently no programming, and they start churning out dentists. And there's no, assurance whether they're going to stay in Kansas or not. We're trying to build something that will keep people here in the state. Right now, we do have an agreement with UMKC to train individuals as dentists. But again, they're going to an urban area in Kansas City. Many of them don't come back. That's what we're worried about. You're seeing this all over the country. If we can start working on this now and right-size it to something that works for Kansas, I think that's going to be more beneficial to the state going forward.
Representative Amix.
Thank you. I appreciate, your partnering with Fort Hays State. Makes a whole lot of sense that we can train and educate new dentists in our state and especially helping with the rural areas of the state. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. We have President Tisa Mason. It's back here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, President and Representative. I did have a follow-up on the dental feasibility study. So it's for approximately between 600 and 800,000 to do the feasibility study. So last year, K-State University came to us with a request for a feasibility study for an animal diagnostic lab. So the legislature gave them 250,000. So I'm kind of curious. I don't know much about feasibility studies and scaling different projects. So why would this project feasibility study be more than that?
Well, one big reason, it's a much more complex project. 2 different universities, 2 different locations, possibly more locations. If you think about how you might include clinics out in western Kansas or locations for dentists or dental students to train in. What's really needed is, when we say feasibility study, really it's a planning, sort of a planning grant where we not only put some preliminary sketches and drawings in place and really lay it out how it will be operated so you all can see that. That's what's really needed, and that's a little bit more complex than just doing a feasibility study. So it's a little bit of a misnomer. We should really call it a planning study so you guys can visualize what this will look like.
Thank you for that. And you had mentioned in your testimony that Wichita State has, I don't know if I'm paraphrasing your testimony a little bit, but that there's been a savings or a decrease in spending or cuts through different departments. So I don't know if the correct, is it a net cut or where, can you speak a little bit more about reductions? I don't know if they were underperforming programs that you've parted ways with, but is it a net reduction?
Yeah, we've cut positions, over 100 positions. Now, we're not just talking faculty positions, staff positions, supportive type, physical plant positions. But yes, we've cut positions. And we have reallocated those dollars to help improve compensation.
So is that, when you make those decisions, is that over a certain period of time that you're referencing the 23 million, or is it cumulative over, a certain amount of time, or part of a larger restructure?
It's, it's a larger restructuring, but it's been over the last 5 years that we have made those internal cuts. And so that's allowed us not to have to increase tuition and fees and those sorts of things that take our internal resources and reallocate that.
Thank you for that. So you had on your presentation, I want to say it's page 5. So need-based aid for workforce and talent. So this is per FTE spending on need-based aid. What year data is that from? Is it fiscal year 23 or is it?
No, it's this current year that's been prepared by the regents. They get the information from a national organization that collects this data. So before you all started, the PowerPoint's not up there, but before you all started this investment, we were about $100 per FTE. Now we're $300. So we're making progress. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I've been trying to track this data for several years to see if we're making some headway, and it does look like we are making some headway. But I know the state higher education finance report comes out, and I haven't seen even the 24 data, so that's interesting that the Board of Regents has 25 data on that. I will note for the committee, and I'll get you this information, but there is a chart that talks about the total appropriations per FTE for Kansas, and it does appear that we are doing rather well in that area. But it's just a different
It's
way to,
overall, yeah.
it's overall. So it looks like the only person higher than us in the region, total education appropriations, is Nebraska. We're tied with Arkansas according to data that was fiscal year 23. So I just bring that up because we're all learning more about these numbers and how you can look at numbers differently. But on another chart, President, you had talked about the value that you've established at Wichita State and how you've been able to pull along that corridor that you had mentioned. So what is the enrollment doing from out-of-state students? In terms of those, since you started that initiative, how much growth has that been again from out of state?
Yeah, so we implemented that about 7 years ago, and that's enrollment from those areas on that corridor has grown about 40%. So for years, 300 or 400 students came from those areas, and now almost 1,600 students are coming from that. So it's significant.
Okay. There's been some conversation, at least in appropriations, about this additional financial aid. You had mentioned it's in the governor's request for 14.2 additional or need-based aid. And so there's questions about what are the requirements for eligibility. And as I understood it, it was if you were Pell eligible, you would be eligible for this as well. But
That's correct.
I don't believe there's any statutory requirements if you're in state or out of state. So do you have any input for us if we decide to look at changes or caution about if we were to do anything?
Well, the students with most need are those that are Pell eligible. And those are the ones that are not coming to school because they just don't have a pathway to doing that. Bright kids just don't have this opportunity. So if we're going to do anything, I would recommend that you make sure that it goes to Pell eligible students. The aid that you all have been providing us, that's just been going to Kansans. We're not sending that out of state. So I think that's also important as well.
Okay, so that money that we were talking about, that's for Kansas residents. Okay.
We have other resources that we're using for out-of-state students.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for the conversation there. Are there any other questions for President Muma? If not, thank you for being here. I know you have to get back to Wichita, so thank you for taking the time.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Next, as part of some testimony we have for Wichita State in support, I'd like to bring forth for a few minutes Tanya Bruner, Executive Director for Oral Health Kansas. So welcome to the committee. I believe we've been able to give you maybe a couple minutes.
No problem.
Want
I've
to go
got
over
a
any,
couple minutes.
you've provided some written testimony as well. So thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the chance to be with you this afternoon. And again, my name is Tanya Dorfbruner. I'm the Executive Director of Oral Health Kansas. We are the state's oral health consumer advocacy organization. You can probably see we're brand new to this committee, so it's nice to be with you today. I do want to share just some conversations our organization has been starting to have based on some conversations we've actually already had with our friends at Wichita State. And just thinking about some of what some of the needs might be as they look towards a possible feasibility study. So as consumer advocates, we really get a lot of calls, emails, Facebook messages, all kinds of things from people all over the state asking for help finding dental care. They're often people with disabilities, people who live in rural areas. We've talked about that a lot already this afternoon. A lot of people who have Medicaid coverage that are really, really desperately looking for care. So ensuring those folks get care is a real core to who we are and what is important to the oral health community. So there's a couple of things we wanted to just kind of put on your radar. I think you already have some of these on your radar based on the conversation you just had, but just wanted to kind of highlight those. One thing that, if the feasibility studies, were to move forward, one thing we would really want to see in that would be that any clinics associated with the dental school, and when dental schools exist, you always have clinics. So there's places for the dental students to get training and start to learn to be able to provide care. So there are clinics that members of the public can come to. But we think it'd be really important for those dental clinics to be Medicaid providers. You saw some data, I think, already about just the dental provider network in the state. Well, the Medicaid dental provider network is much worse. It's extremely small. Only about 30% of dentists take Medicaid. Only 13% take a substantial number of people with Medicaid. 41 counties in the state have no Medicaid dental provider at all. All of those are in rural communities. So there's some really, really urgent needs. And we just think it's really important, since Medicaid is a state-funded insurance program, and we're talking about a university that would be state-funded, to make sure that that is part of the makeup of that clinic. I point this out in part because the Advanced Education and General Dentistry program at Wichita State is not a Medicaid provider, and there's a lot of good reasons for that. But I just think it's important to put that on the table, that would be something important. Another thing, and you've already heard a lot about this, so I think it's already clearly on your radar, is just that it should have a real significant rural focus. Make sure that the rural communities are represented. I think you heard very well from the president. When students come from rural communities, they stay in rural communities, and that's really important. And just the final thought is that as a feasibility study might move forward, we think it'd be important that that Oral Health Kansas and some of the other oral health community members be a part of that conversation, that it not just be a university conversation, but the entire oral health community really be a part of what it takes to get a dental school started, if that's what the legislature decides wants to do. So I appreciate the chance to visit with you, and happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you very much for being here and your testimony and sharing with us. Is there any questions from the committee? Representative Wagoner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bruner, I'm very curious. If there's a shortage of dentists, why not just have some sort of subsidy incentive for dental providers to come out to Western Kansas? Why would a dental school actually move the needle when, again, just being on this committee the first time, it's amazing, how many people don't stay in the area, where they go to school? Just answer me that.
No, that's a great question, and I'm not certain I can be the best person to answer it. And I'm not even honestly here to be the advocate for the dental school. I'm just saying that if we're moving forward, there's lots of great things that could happen. There are some incentive programs for dentists to move to rural areas. There's a really great program, for instance, run by the Kansas Dental Association called KIND. It stands for Kansas. Oh, I forget. Kansas. It's a clever acronym that is about bringing more dentists to Kansas Initiative for New Dentists. That's it, Kansas Initiative for New Dentists, about bringing dentists to rural communities. Right now, I think it works with almost any dental school. Right now, they've had dozens of students go through this. If a student decides to commit to living in a rural community, and it has to be a pretty significant rural community, and they commit to being a Medicaid provider, they get X number of dollars repaid for their loans. And I think I heard the other day that the average payment could be $25,000, but maybe as high as $100,000, depending on levels of commitments. There's also federal loan repayment programs and some state loan repayment programs. So there are programs out there. It's just, I think we do need a lot more work to focus on how do we, and it's not just dental. I think rural communities are struggling with every profession, and whatever we can do to really get more people to be in those rural communities is important. Yeah, great question.
Thank you for that. Representative Sweeley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Director, for being here. Hey, I just had an event in my district recently, the K-Mom, the charitable dentist. So out in Hutchinson, Kansas Mission of Mercy put on free dental care for pretty much anybody that wanted to come and didn't have any major underlying health conditions. So I believe Friday and Saturday, they saw over 600 patients, and being one of the only legislators there, I was just pretty much had a lot of the dentists and oral surgeons coming up to me and speaking from rural or western Kansas area, small towns. Can you kind of explain deeper into detail of, I know we don't have anything to do with the Medicaid reimbursement rates, but the problem that we're seeing of why so many of these dentists cannot take Medicaid patients, and then we see in almost every field in Kansas, health, veterinarians, dental, pretty much all of these specialty type things, the generation is getting older and older and trying to retire, but nobody can take over these businesses. So we have a certain amount of slots at UMKC, but what are we going to do? Just continue to raise those slots. And then those people are not coming back to Kansas. Sorry, my voice kind of went out, but
That's a lot of great, you made a lot of really great points there. Thank you. And I'll say it's the Kansas Dental Charitable Foundation. It's the Ferret Foundation arm of the Dental Association that runs that event. I was there too. I'm sorry I didn't get to see you there, but I was there as well. So I don't want to speak on behalf of the Dental Association, but that is, that is a great service that provides care for hundreds of people every year. And you mentioned Medicaid. Actually, we are as an organization, we're doing a lot of advocacy this year to raise the Medicaid rates. Our dental rates in Medicaid haven't been raised in a long, long time. They are, they're not enough to incentivize dentists to be Medicaid providers, which is one reason I bring this up with Wichita State. So we actually are trying to work on that. There's a model from the state of Missouri where their legislature in 3 years ago raised the Medicaid rates to like a commercial level, like what a Delta Dental might pay. And when they did that, they actually paired it with kind of a facilitation program to help dental offices learn how to be Medicaid providers. It's administrative hurdles. It's kind of scary to learn how to do. So after they did that, they were able to increase the number of Medicaid dentists in Missouri by 450 within 2 years, have 80,000 more dental visits within 2 years, reduce the number of underserved counties by half in the rural communities. So all that is to say, there's a lot of proof that when you pair kind of administrative assistance with a Medicaid rate increase, you're going to get more dental providers, existing providers, becoming Medicaid providers out there. Rural issues are still, there's still an issue. So yeah, I don't know if I've answered your question, but there's a lot to unpack there. There's a lot of good questions.
Representative Swaley, one more.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I know, I apologize. That was a lot. And, kind of what we've seen in all these specialty trades right now is the state of Kansas has maybe not done enough. So what we're trying to do is give enough scholarships to incentivize the scholarship that they receive, that they have to serve whatever amount of time in the state of Kansas. So are you saying that if we do get this, dental facility and dental school, we're going to be doing similar things like that, I would assume, correct? Scholarships in the future to incentivize Kansans to, stay closer to Hayes, stay in Wichita, stay western of just northeast Kansas. Because when we give almost 100 slots a year to UMKC, I hate to say it, but younger people like to stay in those bigger cities. It's fun. There's more people. It's what they're accustomed to. So I would assume that we're going to be trying to finding some way to incentivize them to stay in western Kansas, correct?
I would assume the same, and we don't manage those programs, so I can't say 100% that's the fact. I would assume the same, though. Absolutely, I can't see a world in which there are not concerted efforts still happening to try to get loan repayment programs to get students or graduates to stay in rural communities. I don't see how that wouldn't happen. I do think it's like 30 slots a year that Kansas buys down from the UMKC. I think that their total enrollment is something like 107, I think or 109, something like that, and I think 30 of those are Kansas slots. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Representative. Those are very good questions, good conversation, and unfortunately we're running short on time, but I do appreciate you being here today and your proponent testimony for Wichita State University as well. I will direct the committee to written-only testimony provided by Douglas Scott, Manager of Government Relations and Public Affairs at Textron Aviation. Please read over his testimony, and I'm sure he and his team would be glad to meet with you individually outside of committee to share all that they're working on in a positive way for the state of Kansas. Next, I would like to welcome back to the podium Brianna Horton for a very brief overview and summary of Emporia State University's budget for fiscal year 25 and 26.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brianna Horton. As you can see on that first page, it gives an overview of the university's budget and a little bit of history. If we turn to page 2, you'll have the summary budget request, and you'll see that SGF reappropriation. The agency's approved amount includes $3.6 million in unspent SGF monies, including for the cybersecurity academic program, demolition funds, state capital renewal, Smart Kansas 21, and the National Board for Certified Teachers. You'll see those 3 items, the operational adjustments, diversity, equity, inclusion, and student financial aid, which are in each university budget. If you flip to page 4, you'll see some of those items carry over for need-based aid and state capital renewal. Item 4, you'll see about the Nursing and Student Wellness Center. If you flip to page 5, I wanted to highlight item 13. So the 2024 legislature appropriated 8.1 million SGF to pay off debt for the Memorial Union. The payment of this debt had previously been financed through a fee of $125.12 per semester. The university is no longer charging that student fee, which is reflected in the decrease in the revised estimate. So there's a decrease in that account because that fee is no longer being charged. If we move to page 6, you will also see that summary of budget for 2026. So I'll just highlight that 8.1 million I talked about is reflected here on item number 4. And then there is the Emporia State Investment Model. So that is reflected because we're comparing this to the FY 2025 approved to FY 2026. So that's why you see that decrease. So if you look at page 7, item 5, you'll see that the 2024 legislature appropriated $9 million for the Emporia State Investment Model, and that was a one-time appropriation FY 2025. And then again, if you flip to page 8, you'll see that there's that decrease in those funds because of that 8.1 million SGF. So when, again, we're compared to 25 to 26, there's a decrease in that account because they're no longer charging that student fee. If you flip to page 9, you'll see most of the capital improvements are primarily for rehab and repair. So that has to do with HVAC repairs, roof repairs, elevator improvements, plumbing repairs, some things for Welch Stadium in FY 2026. There's quite a few projects that I'm not super familiar with, but I'd be happy to share a spreadsheet with everybody if you had questions about what those projects are. And with that, I will stand for questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brianna. Are there questions from members of the committee about the budget summary for Emporia State? Seeing none, thank you, Brianna, for the overview there. And next, I'd like to welcome up on behalf of Emporia State University, the president, Ken Hush. Ken, welcome back to the committee. Glad to see you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Members, appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. Thanks for calling me Ken. I'm not from the academic world, for those of you that don't know. I'm a retired businessman. From Emporia, Kansas. I'm an alma mater, Emporia Stater, and my father's still living down the street in Emporia. You've seen the cover page of us that we presented, Innovating for Kansas Efficiencies. I want to make sure, and excuse me, Chair, time-wise, because I want to make sure that we're on your clock and your schedule.
Yes, we're on time. I think so. I texted the committee chair that needs the room after us to see. They're not meeting, so we can go over a little bit. So I want to give you the time you need to.
Okay, we'll try to be efficient.
Okay.
Okay. Want to make sure you would ask for wanting to make sure right off the gate what our ask is, so that that's understood up front should we get dragged into another discussion. Our main ask right now is currently a regional ask of $7 million. It's $21 million as a system between the 3 regionals, Fort Hays State, Pittsburgh State, and ourselves. So that's the ask. Recently, I've been asked by the regents to also mention to address legal expenses that we have ongoing from a lawsuit, and we'll touch on that later. Page 1. You've all heard. Now I think all 3 research universities have spoken. It's phenomenal what they do in their respective areas. A regional university is not that. Okay, thanks, Clay. We're not that. We have backbones. We're more, for us, we used to do a lot of things at Emporia State. We've carved it out. We've gone back to our strike zones. It's always been the strike zones. We just didn't fund them correctly, okay? And we cut out areas that should not have been cut, okay? For an example, we even cut over the past years. This is where the cut mentality comes back and kicks you later on. We cut out our employees recruiting to go to high schools to bring in students. So imagine cutting out sales for a manufacturing plant. That's the downside of cut versus an efficiency investment model combination. Backbones, we're teachers. We've always been the Kansas Normal Schools, how we started out. Us in the University of Kansas, K-State, we're starts. Business, tech, cybersecurity, that's what we do. Nursing, we've always been it. In fact, our nursing, all of our activity has been on our regional hospital property. And so we had to move that back to campus because of what they were wanting. So we're in the process of bringing that to campus through a new facility. And lastly, we've always been library information management. Our success rate is 98% of either continuing on education or getting a job. You can see how it flows into the Kansas workforce shortages, okay? Period. Notice the bottom right. 90%. Roughly 90% of our students are from Kansas. Nearly 90% of our...
President, would you want to, I think it's on the next
sorry.
slide. Sorry about that.
I
I
apologize.
just want to make sure we're all looking at the same place. You might have to point it at her. She can get it. I think it's the one before.
There you go. Yeah. Okay, sorry, thank you. Okay. Literally 90% of our graduates, once they graduate, stay in Kansas. And literally 90% of our students, it's estimated, that work while they attend Emporia State University. Not only are they current taxpayers while they're going to school, they remain here. The return on investment for a Kansas dollar has a 10-year payback because of these ratios. Next slide. First two, these are just quotes. When a regent reached, it was actually the chair of the Board of Regents at the time, Cheryl Harrison Lee. In fact, I've got to give her credit and a few others for enabling us to be more efficient and go through our cleanup process. These are just, I was asked, and our leadership team that we were going to form was asked to do this. Steward the university. She wanted to re-engineer education and what the possibilities were. They wanted an analysis done from one end of the campus to the other, and frankly, bring it back nuts and bolts, what it looks like. And by the way, I asked two things in return. By the way, metrics, measurements, business results oriented, that's just the way we were going to do it. I asked two things. I asked, hey, instead of the monthly meetings, could we have an ongoing discussion with a few regents to help us during our process as a sounding board? Number two, as I said, in my opinion, I've always worked in an environment where it's a two-way street. We come to you with findings, we use a sounding board, and by the way, we also provide critique of systems and how to get better overall. A lot of people might probably not care for the latter one after sight. So the last two comments were just later on, I was asked to be permanent. Had no intention of doing so, and you can see what that's been, okay? Next page, before we start, I want to make sure we're going to be using Emporia State, higher ed, and the industry, and I want to make sure that it's interpreted as Emporia State and our activities on what we're seeing, and I don't want to imply anything towards others. We're going to address the nuts and bolts, which are page 15 and 16 share. I mentioned the ask. What did we walk into? This is a little more than 3 years, what we walked into. We broke up the silos early on. In fact, the first year, I didn't know how to present. I had to look up the previous year's presentations. I asked the Board of Regents for help, some coaching guidance. What I did say is, we did not come and ask for one penny. I wasn't raised that way. You do the work, you do the cleanup, and then if it's worthy of something in return, then it's a discussion. So this is what we walked into. We asked our various campus, some of our students, our external stakeholders, the city, the community, alumni, businesses, what do they think of us on a go-forward basis? This is what's come out of it. The other thing that's come out is we started looking at the data and running the analysis. The next page, head count, this is what it was when we stepped into this situation. It's the official head count, the 20th day number, then September that we all received, that Board of Regents put out. You can see the 6 universities, the regents are at the top there. Apologize for the font. But you can see at the time, enrollments had been going down, okay? And, you know, there were 3 other regents with a higher enrollment decline than ours. You can see community colleges, you can see the municipal, you can see the community colleges, another 16 had higher percentage of decline. You can see the independents and the privates as well down the page. This was a concern. This is a red flag for me. What this says to me is, and I'll say it for the 3rd year, okay, in this way, supply demand is out of whack for education in Kansas. There's too much supply. We've got to be more efficient, not only ourselves, but as a system. And we provided a lot of information and opinions to the Board of Regents over the last few years. It also says in a declining market, and you might recall when K-Board presented earlier in the week, they were forecasting enrollment decline, demographic decline. It's all over the nation. Everyone's talking about it happening either this year or next, okay? So you've got further pressure. But the competition thing, and I think Representative Wagner, to paraphrase an earlier question in the week is, hey, are we trying to do too much for all the areas and everybody doing a lot of it? Yes, it's down to competition, head on head. Now, there's going to be winners and losers, okay? And frankly, I'm impressed by the regionals and having these billion-dollar endowments, okay? And it must be phenomenal what they could do with that. But at the same time, this is a concern, okay? At the same time, this page, what this says to me, stepping aside, is this is a huge opportunity. In fact, businesses look for this. Industries that don't really want to change, that are okay with status quo, that aren't valued properly and efficient like they are, you can step in and clean it all up, and then it's going to succeed. That's the mode we've been in. Cleanup. You're going to hear a lot from us. This is also just a document that K-Board put out on the system about the same time, you know, regarding some indicative improvements and also financial challenges, but some of the reductions have been made. And I thought, I look on the page and down the bottom there, cumulative budget reductions, 219 million. I'm going, wow, that's huge. That's impactful, okay? And then I said, well, okay, we said, okay, what's Emporia States look like? And this is, they had one for each of the regents, schools. This is what ours look like, okay? Boy, right-sizing the workforce, you know, all the declines, that's a good thing. Program reduction, that's a good thing. Cumulative budget reduction, it's a good thing, 8.8 million. And then I realized, I've been told our deficit's over 10 million. And by the way, Representative Sanders, you asked the other day to someone kind of what is SGF funding on a percentage basis versus a total budget. It's on the chart later on in the slide deck. We're roughly 33%. Okay, so our SGF funding is 33% of our total budget. That equates to $45 million on an SGF basis every year versus $130 million overall budget. But when I looked at the operative word being, it's over a 6-year period, these calculations. So let's just go down to budget reduction, 8.8 million. That equates to 1.5 million a year reductions, okay? But our deficit, 10 million. So the point is, this isn't, it looks good, but for us, in Portage State University, it's not making a dent, not at all. In fact, I'm embarrassed, okay, right-sizing the workforce. What we did is we took credit for, positions going down, but some of the positions we've just moved over to an open role or an open line. We took credit for natural attrition, right? Resign, retire, death. So that didn't move the needle, okay? So we had to make real proactive impact on a go-forward basis. The other thing it taught, and we went to our team and said, listen, let's stop taking credit for examples that I just gave you for things that are going to happen anyways, meaning natural attrition. In fact, our open lines now, we swept them, FTEs, okay, after a period of time. So every role that we're looking at on a renewing type of basis or new, it's a case-by-case basis. Next page, opening up. It was, again, I have a buddy who's an ex or a Chevy dealer, so I better use his example. He's a retired ex-senator. But it's like a Chevy Nova, okay? I thought they were really cool in the 70s. And by the way, the people who souped them up and nice wheels and painted, and it was shiny and shiny, it all looks great. Fast forward today. That's what we realized, that's what higher ed was for Portage State University. It's shiny, looks great on the outside, but we haven't lifted up the hood in a while. We got to see what's really underneath there and what's happening. Oil hadn't been changed in a long time, air filters, you name it. We lift up the hood on-campus enrollment, and by the way, part of our analysis, and you'll see it, is we went back to backward integrate and seeing when did all this happen, that all this started for us, and what have we learned from that? And so what we did learn was, well, online education came about, okay? 15, 20 years ago now, going, give or take. That has changed the whole dynamic, particularly, I think, for the regionals. And again, they'll speak about this, I think, next week. Our on-campus enrollment, okay, and you can see on that page for a handful of universities on the region side, was hugely impacted. So what that translates to, less students on campus, the buildings are optimized less, deferred maintenance is probably going to go up if you're plugging holes with finance and putting the money elsewhere. That's a huge key and financial driver. Rural impact. Representative Amix, you mentioned the importance of rural. Absolutely. We broke down the enrollment. And by the way, these graphs break down the research. Yes, there has been a decline in enrollment, but they are back up. But look what's happened to the regional universities, the 3 of us, and then look at community college. It's that rural impact. State of Kansas needs to decide what they want to do next on this. Revenue sources, resources, we looked at that. Again, Representative Sanders, you asked about the percentage of SGF. That's on the right side of the column there at 33%. So the top line red is your student enrollment. By the way, the bottom line gold is converting that enrollment to revenue dollars. And then the black line in the middle is your SGF funding and what's that done. Basically, as you'll see, the point of no return, meaning the cross that it didn't make sense anymore from a financing perspective, was around 2009, 2010. At that point in time, with state funding and the enrollment pressures converted to dollars, there's only 2 groups that we're going to pay for that on an ongoing basis. either the state or, unfortunately, the students and families. So we really concentrated on the students and the families. By the way, Point of No Return, it's a song by Kansas, the band in the late 70s, okay? Like that. Increased costs, you can see there. Yep, deferred maintenance went up as a system. That's the left-hand graph. By the way, we're below that on the red, on the same graph. You can see what we've done. We've flatlined. Now we've started to decrease. We renovated an old dorm. Nice, it's beautiful now on campus, probably 6, 7 years ago, perhaps. Okay, built a new one a couple years after that. We left 3 idle, empty dorms in the middle of our CAS empty. Okay, yeah, we use one for storage, another one a little bit for students groups. When you're plugging holes, you need money. You're not taking money in the right places. And now, thanks to all of you, the last few years, we've been able to tear down those buildings, okay? By the way, we are tearing down 4 buildings and we have sold another one. By the way, our deferred maintenance, it's at 2% currently. In the next 24 months, that will go down to 15% improvement, deferred maintenance. Issue model, FYI, we had to rebuild a culture. We had to rebuild a mentality. We said we're not just going to be territorial in our thinking. We have to think as a taxpayer, and by the way, putting ourselves in your shoes, who represent all of us as taxpayers. So we have to think at ESU first, and number one, and the community in that. Number 2 is we had to think of a system, what's the right thing if we put ourselves in KBOR's shoes, and then number 3, as a taxpayer. We've taken a lot of action, and by the way, coordinating everything through KBOR. In fact, it's been unanimous approvals on everything. You can see there, those numbers, what they signify. Let's just take the number 1. That signifies in one of our programs how many students we had in that program. 1 student. And it may be that we had multiple people, faculty and staff, supporting those. Inefficient. And that's what all those numbers signify. We had a presence in China, and it was a financial a meltdown, as well as various other things. And so we withdrew from that. And by the way, when we did our program review and presented to KBOR, we actually gave them our forecasted numbers on what we expected from a student loss perspective. And obviously, that translates always to revenue. So, so we exited things like that. You can see 2022 at the bottom. You know, we took our action. And it was interesting. The first university that took action right after that was Southwestern University. The privates have followed, a handful of them. By the way, Greg Schneider and I have been invited last fall to the full group of private universities to speak on efficiencies and things and see where we can go. That's what should be doing more. The synergies across the state, regardless of the walls and the barriers and territorial type attitude. We spoke with a few community colleges, and we're going to be speaking with them as well. So, improved efficiencies. Headlines, you can see what's happened. Actually, there was a turn. We took our action fall of 22. In May, the following year, all of a sudden, there was a title change. Wall Street Journal, Inside Higher Ed Chronicle, all these type of large media firms started suggesting and coming out with articles. You can see the headlines there. Something needs to change. Summer of 23 is what we refer to it. Sounds like an Eagles song. Next page, Don Henley. Nationwide response. Okay, you can see since this time what's all going on. Okay, numerous states. I get calls from other states and universities asking what we did, how we did it, and this type of thing. So it's all over the board. You can see the financial type of impacts as well. Financial health, interesting little bits and points, and I'll get to the point. Our total debt's now down 25%. Okay, You can see on the right, we attacked deferred maintenance, space optimization. The bottom right, composite financial index. That's how we get graded. It should be going up, not down or level. So, and we have increased there to one of the highest under the region system. The left, Chair, this is what I wanted to point out, and it's a recent ask. We have made changes. For 7-8 months, we looked at all the administration and merged roles, decreased roles, et cetera, et cetera. We're now to the point where, you know, on the faculty side, we have reduced that, but our hands now are tied to take any further action and efficiencies. I'll touch on it. Last page, here's the nuts and bolts page. Efficiency actions. We look at it, I know it's a 12-month process, budget process. We force ourselves to expand to 3-year. Anything beyond the 3-year, I don't think usually happens. Okay, very seldom on the master plans and things. So we keep it, try to. It's a great framework, but try to run 3-year action step. The first thing we did, and we told all of you over the last couple of years, we look back, top left, waste. We either misallocated or wasted $166 million that we could have made slight changes over the last 18, 19 years, okay? We own it. Year one, we came, we did a lot of work, efficiencies, and by the way, before we came to the state of Kansas, we went to our external stakeholders, city, county, Hornet Nation, you know, new people. And by the way, one of the benefits of doing all of this is our giving over the last 24 months has increased 70%. Because, sure, you're always going to have people not satisfied with certain actions. We're up. In fact, I'm going to lead to this. As you know, over a year ago, we came to legislators and asked for bonding for $15 million because we had to move that nursing facility, and we had to do it quick. So we're tearing down a dorm, building a new nursing complex, and it's student success oriented as well now. $15 million we bonded. Thank you for approving it. We didn't stop there. In the next 12 months, we went to all of our stakeholders, knowing how you were supporting us. We had record donations, record gifts, lead gifts, because health in rural communities, as you say, is so important. We came back to you last year, as you might recall, and told you, thank you, but we don't need the bonding any longer. We're going to return it. We raised the $15 million. So lower debt, avoids debt from a state agency. In addition, it's avoiding interest expense of another $9 million. One step further, if we would have built the building, the on-campus students probably would have had a $475 student fee. We avoided that, okay? That's what we do. We wouldn't come and ask for free money, okay? You can see the top, the efficiencies created. We're still creating them. There's 66 million on the top line over a 3-year period. You take that out. By the way, because of the investment mentality, we have reinvested. So we're spending dollars as well. And because, again, those cuts in certain areas, we had to replace them. Okay? State allocation, you can see in the middle line what you have presented to us. And then in net efficiencies. So with that, Chair, I will stop. Any questions?
Thank you, President Hush. Appreciate your presentation and your thoroughness. And you know, we are a budget committee, so your slide decks definitely speak our language quite a lot. So we thank you for that. So are there any questions from members of the committee? Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 9 of the handout, it has state appropriations as a percentage of total revenue at 33%, and then tuition and fees as a percent of total revenue at 25%. So I was just wondering if you could tell us where the rest of the revenue comes from to get to 100%.
Primarily from our foundation and giving, primarily that way. Obviously, in some other grants and things.
You have a idea of the total amount of giving or from the foundation every year?
Yeah, that's one of the big improvements we've made. And an external party, we went to foundation, and I think similar to regionals, we all each have about 100 million, 120 million as an endowment, not nearly like the research. We went to them and said, listen, why are you sitting on that? You've got to reinvest. And so our scholarship giving for our students has increased 400%, okay, over the next 2-year period. So, you know, and in addition to that, we have, you know, we were the only Regent University to not raise our tuition last year and fees, which was a net negative. Our students this year are paying less than what they did last year. So they've been a huge help, our foundation. And it was mentioned by, I believe, Brianna earlier, we've waived student application fees, other type of fees. We've input housing type of scholarships and discounts, all stressing the importance of student cost.
Are there other questions from the committee? Vice Chair Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ken, thank you for your presentation. So it seems like the university went through some pretty tough times. And I know it was in there somewhere, but what's your total enrollment now?
Yes, sir. We're at about 4,600. And of that, and it's tough, again, going to the on-campus enrollment, we're at about 2,400 at the point, and which is probably similar on an on-campus. I know we all you know, look at the data differently and measure it, but that's where we are.
What do you really need for it to be?
Break even?
Yes.
Like the question. We're probably at about 5,400. Okay. All at the same time, and just so you know, is walking into this deficit again, 40 million was the state general funding. We walked into, after reinvestments, to plug the holes where we really needed to. We were a deficit of 19 million, nearly 50% of SGM. Okay. In 22 months, we knocked that down to 12 million. Okay. We've knocked that down another 2 million, so we're 60% down. And in the next 24 months, we're striving for efficiencies to be even.
So you're about 800 short, and you think you can make that when you just said that? But
I think, you know, I think the way that we look at the head count is wrong. And so what we've done is we've made our efficiency basis what our enrollment is now. We have space for upside, but we're going to be efficient the way we are. The national trends and the state trends says that a few universities are going to be able to increase enrollment, but the others better tighten their belts and get efficient and clean up. And that's the approach we've taken in the meantime. It's the smaller, we're more efficient at this size and smaller with everything that we've done from a cost perspective and reinvestment perspective. I'd rather have the smaller tumor than the larger one.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Vice Chair. We'll go to Ranking Member Representative Amix.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. President Hush, remind me again, how much is the total in debt of a student coming out of college after graduation?
For Kansas, it's around 21,000, I believe. That's what the KBOR data is. It's much higher nationwide.
At Emporia State would be about 21,000?
Yes, we're probably a little lower than the state average.
As I look at your budget, there was the $9 million that we've talked about in recent years pulled out as a one-time expense by the Legislative Budget Committee. What kind of effect is that going to have on your budget, one, and number two, on that indebtedness of that kid coming out of school?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, like I mentioned to Representative Fairchild, we've gone to our foundation and increased scholarships off the charts compared to what we've done historically. So we have we have taken that step first. I think the 9 million on the investment side, and as you can see, for the 9 million that you've given us, we've created efficiency 3 times that. In fact, net on the chart, it's ahead. So that is not in our budget, the 9 million. But again, we've been converting those type of funds to the returns and efficiencies and getting it paid back elsewhere. You know, it's interesting that you asked that because it's a great question. And I've heard the 9 million was just one of the pieces given to us by you. And again, thank you. For example, the year before, it was 11 million totals, 9 plus 2 for something else. At the same time, if you look at the other universities and add up all their pieces too, for example, last year, ourselves and Hayes were pretty close to the same. So what everybody chooses to fund is just different. So.
Appreciate your comment. Thank you.
Sir.
Have some other questions, Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation on this. And it's very informative. And as a business professor, it's always nice to talk numbers. But I want to kind of circle back a little bit with my colleague, ranking member. Can you tell us what the Emporia State investment model is, and what was it for?
You're asking me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yeah, the Emporia State, it was what I explained earlier. It was the model for higher education. So what we were going to do is what we had done at Emporia State and observed and talking with these people outside the states as well in universities is everyone seems to concentrate on this area or this area. We took a step back and totally looked at every single activity business group in our business. For example, academics is one, HR is one, finance one. We ran analysis systems on that, each one of those, okay? And we did a couple things. We did a miniature profit loss statement, okay? We actually did one on every department as well in academics. So we had to take a step back, understand where we were. The investment model, what it provided, and we're giving it, you know, on Monday, on the first year, is basically, it was always forecasted. The 9 million was, the 6 million was to, call it what it is, it was for cleanup type of exercise. And then the remaining 3 million was for investments in programs. Okay, the first 6 million too was for student success models, everything. We had to reload, as explained earlier. We had cut so many programs and so many personnel in these areas, we had to refinance that. And so that was the bulk of it.
And sir, when you say you're going to give a presentation on Monday, where would that be at?
Oh, it was handing in the first year of the 9 million model.
Okay.
We have to provide how we spent that, the budget versus actual. So that's being given.
That will be turned into us, or?
I believe it's the Committee on Appropriations and Senate Ways and Means.
Appreciate that.
Get a copy of that to you if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. You teased us with lawsuits and
yes,
we're going to talk about that, and I didn't hear that.
Yeah, this is it. And by the way, you know, we took action. By the way, after cleaning up all the campus, we took the final piece of action. It was program review. You saw the numbers on the number of students in some programs. Okay, we cut through an analysis process a lot of programs. About 20% to be exact. We asked, before we did all that, we were being coached and worked with the Board of Regents. And we asked, is there anything we could do? Because there's tons of inefficiencies throughout the entire university. This is one. And they said, oh, well, they made a policy during COVID because of the financial concerns and everything. And they had made that, and it was expired. So we asked, well, as you well know, we asked is it possible to reopen that so we can potentially utilize it? They voted unanimously yes. So we did utilize that policy. There's an appeal process embedded in the K board policy that we went through. The next step, there were a district, local type of process and review. And then at the same time, we have a group of faculty that have sued us through the federal district court. Okay. That's been ongoing for some time now. Right before Christmas, sometime, the federal district judge made a ruling. And fortunately, the policy or the procedure that we handled it was solid. They came back with two things. The first thing is, in layman terms, okay, they said that KBOR did not have the authority to make the policy back then because of old policies, procedure, whatnot. So that one caught us off guard. Two is they came back with tenured, tenure track faculty is a property right. And so that obviously means an entitlement and job forever until this is settled in some form. So obviously, as a state agency, we're working with the Attorney General on this. And the other option to correct that is via legislation.
And Mr. Chair, one final question, if I may, and just on your slide, and of course I took my glasses off, slide 16, it's the efficiency actions, and you have there in the left column discovery that there was 166 million wasted. Is that overall, is like, can you just tell me about that? Is that just based on the efficiency amount?
Yes, sir, and I'll touch on it previously, is that we looked back, wasted, misallocated, all-encompassing. We look back on when these changes, and there's charts on the enrollment side, okay? If we could have gone back in time and have done a little bit of an adjustment, a little bit at a time, instead of snowballing and waiting, happening to do things at one time, this is the amount that could have been saved. And it's a combination of a lot of things, okay? It's not only personnel workforce, it's also depreciation. It's all encompassing of the 14 activity groups throughout our university. It was meant to be, we can be better.
And I understand the logic. Just a comment on that is I personally know the administrators and several of the faculty at Emporia State, and so I would avoid saying that they wasted funds during that time, especially at 166 when we can't really calculate how we come to that. It just is, it's just not respectful. So I just appreciate that, and that's my questions. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. So on that note, just one last thing. So
President Hosh? Yep. Go ahead.
So we're still paying $2 million a year for personnel that programs no longer exist. Okay. We're going to be going through this process, and again, till it's solved in some form or manner. That is, frankly, a huge surprise because we utilized the Board of Regents policy put in place. So again, they've come back and asked us to speak with you about that.
Thank you, President. How much did you say again?
It's about $2 million a year on an ongoing. We've got a little more of that ongoing, and we can provide you some details on that.
And so how long have you had to, I guess, provide that?
About a year and a half so far in some form or another. But the main thing on this, and again, it's a long-term liability. Okay, we're gonna have to put it on our balance sheet for us. And we don't know whether it's an annualized amount that we're going to put on our balance sheet yet, or we'll have to walk through those, or we have a total exposure of nearly 14 million as a university on an ongoing basis.
So that paints a kind of a a bad picture. I mean, if how are universities supposed to make adjustments, especially with this enrollment cliff, if there's this legal ruling overhanging everybody? I mean, I'm sure since you're party to the litigation, you probably can't comment too much, but, or maybe you can, but I mean, that's a huge headwind in higher education. Is this stuff happening in other states too? I mean, it seems like it sets a really interesting precedent.
It does, Chair. I mean, and again, you can see the chart that we used earlier. States around the U.S. are being affected by a lot of things right now. And there are some states that are looking at this piece. You know, this was an unexpected item for us. And frankly, we're crashing through the door, as George puts it, on a lot of these things for the system, and we did not see this coming because of the policy in place.
I did have a question more specific to your region as a regional university. So there was some significant economic things that occurred in terms of layoffs with a major manufacturing business there. And then I think there was another one that came maybe a week after or two. Tell me about the challenges from a regional geographic standpoint that you face.
You know, I think, and again, you know, Fort Hays and Pitt can speak to it next week as well, but give or take, we're community sizes of 20 to 24,000-ish, and it's a huge one. I mean, look at the community college areas as well. And so, yes, we had a major, you know, 850 plant layoff, and in fact, closure, okay? You know, we're doing what we can as a university to help them, obviously, but no, the trickle-down effect is a little bit unknown. But yeah, some of those people and their children were students. We had adult education going on as well. We're scrubbing to see what that looks like, but we've got headwinds, which I'm excited because of the cleanup process that we've already started. So we'll adapt accordingly.
Thank you for that. And so as I understand it, in the current budget bill that's in the House, there's regional stabilization dollars to each of the regionals at $3 million. I know that's not what the Board of Regents
Correct.
number is in the unified request, but if the legislature does not appropriate $3 million, how, I should say, can you withstand not having the $3 million? Or on the flip side, if we do include the $3 million, what are you going to do with it?
I think it's the same slide 16. We'll continue to invest in our students and their needs, as well as cleanup and efficiency, make our buildings and assets more efficient.
Okay, and if there is not the $3 million, because of the adjustments you've made previously, can you withstand that? Because you had already mentioned there was a deficit. And I appreciate, because it's not common that people in higher education come to the budget committee and will basically be kind of direct, and this is kind of our shortfall. This is what we're dealing with. So I appreciate your transparency.
What does it mean to us? Yes, we'd be $3 million down. Worse than what we just presented to you. So.
Sure. You had mentioned there, I believe there's not much more you can take off. Is that correct? I mean,
we've got, but I mentioned to our current deficit was at 9 million this year. Again, down from 19. By June 30, we'll take that down to 7. So if we would add back the 3 million and it not be renewed, that 7 would then go back up, in theory, back up. And then we'll have to address that accordingly.
thank you for that. And also you made the change of eliminating out-of-state tuition for all students from all 50 states. Could you share with us a little bit about kind of what data points you have on that in success or not.
Thank you for asking. You know, I refer to tuition and fees, the amount that everybody charges is kind of a posted price. That's the public price. With the efficiencies we've created, all the waiving of application fees, student fees, you know, the tuition dollars that we forego. Last year, if you do a net present value on that over a 10-year basis, we're giving up $11 million on a go-forward basis. We reinvested that in our students. You know, the student housing, I think we gave up around $3 million for a net present value. We're going to continue to make those inroads on the students. And, you know, we're going to fight like crazy to continue to invest, not only in our students, but our people. And we've been doing that.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions from members of the committee or President Hush? If not, President Hush, if you'd like to leave us with any parting comments or anything that you'd like to share with us before we conclude the meeting today.
Thank you. You know, as the regents have told us, we've taken a different approach. We've tried to approach things like they hired us to do. Okay. Our team, we've now been in unison with our model of thinking and putting ourselves in your shoes as legislators representing taxpayers. We've got to do a better job at efficiencies, okay? Throughout the nation, everybody's now noticing, and not everybody, but sure, there's going to be the exceptions. In other words, we've got to get better at it, okay? And I know it's not a popular word in some areas, but waste, there has been some, okay? And we can do better at that. And we're going to be, we're not going to be your largest agency. Our goal is to be your most efficient.
Thank you, President. I appreciate your time today and your willingness to answer committee questions. So thank you.
Thank you.
So committee, moving on into the schedule for the next week. On Monday, we do have a bill hearing. It's regarding the legislation that would authorize Kansas State University to sell some property. And so we'll have a bill hearing on that on Monday. But we will work on the Wichita State University and Emporia State University budgets on Monday. So it's very important that you're here. Tuesday, we have Pittsburgh State University and Fort Hays State University, and we'll work their budgets on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, tentatively planning to do a informational hearing on the bonding request from the universities. We're going to just have an informational hearing, hear from them about what their bonding requests are, what it means, and so we have that fleshed out on Thursday. And Friday will be meeting call of the chair. Does anybody else have any questions for the chair or Brianna?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to follow up on a question that Representative Wagner had. So that 22 million decrease for Wichita State is partially because there's a decrease in salaries and wages. So they have their FY 2025 approved and then the revised estimate. So they had budgeted for that decrease, but there's also some shift in funds. So there are some funds in that account that got shifted to another account. So that's why there's a decrease. But I'm also happy to chat with you if you want to know more about that.
Thank you for following up on that, Brianna. And if any members have any questions they need to follow up with staff, please do so. But with that being said, the meeting is adjourned.